Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
Welcome to the latest episodes of the Daily Memphian Tiger Podcast. I'm the basketball beat writer, Stephen Johnson, joined by my guy, Frank Bonner, as always. A little bit less action this week. The Tigers football team is off. They got a bye week before they got a huge game next week. The Memphis Tigers the basketball team, wraps up their exhibition schedule against Lane College at 1 p.m. on Sunday. But before we kind of get into that, don't forget to check out some of our other podcasts. Jennifer Biggs hosts Sound Bites. Eric Barnes hosts The Sidebar, and our guys Chris Harrington and Drew Hill record the Grizzlies podcast every single week. You can find these and the Tigers podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and of course, thedailymemphian.com. So Frank, last week you were able to take a trip down to the Bounce House in Orlando to check out the Tigers. Didn't come away with a victory, which I think was kind of expected once we got the news that Seth Hennigan was going to miss the game. It was a little bit closer than I thought maybe, but I guess what was your initial impressions of how the Tigers had to kind of fight through some adversity on the road last week?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest impression is, you were basically playing with a fourth-string quarterback. And so it's kind of hard to go on the road in the Bounce House and win with a quarterback who you probably didn't expect to snap a ball at all this season, going into the year. He gives you a different dynamic with his legs, but passing wise, he's still got a lot of growth to do in that area.
Mm-hmm. So how big is this bye week in terms of getting Seth Hennigan ready next week? Arguably, probably the biggest game of the year. You got SMU, and obviously Houston's a little bit down the line. So if you lose those two games, then Tulane and East Carolina become must-win games. So how much is this bye week? How big is that going to be for Seth to maybe get healthy and maybe be ready to face SMU next week?
I think it's huge because, realistically, you're not going to beat SMU if you don't have Seth Hennigan. That's just the nature of it. And so you want to give him the time. He essentially gets 2 weeks to get that shoulder healthy. But for whatever reason, if he can't come back, you still have 2 weeks to figure out the offense behind Peter Parrish. And so I think either way, this off week is vitally important for Parrish to get comfortable and for Seth to kind of heal his wounds a little bit, and hopefully he can show up against SMU.
And I know some of this was by design, the run the read option. So if the read is the defender, crashing down the run, the quarterback keeps it. But were you a little surprised to see that the running backs only had a combined 8 carries last week? Parrish had 22. But were you a little surprised, I guess, the running backs weren't a little more involved in the game plan?
Yeah, I was actually extremely surprised because for one, Brandon Thomas is outside of the fumbles, whatever, he's been pretty solid for you this year. So I thought you would want to use him in the ground game. And then on the other end, Peter Parrish having 22 carries when you're pretty slim at quarterback, I thought they would try to, protect him a little bit, because if he goes down, you're left with, either a transfer walk on, or you got Jeremiah, who came to the team as a receiver, right? So, I thought they would have wanted to kind of protect his health a little bit, but yeah, I was really surprised to see that Brandon Thomas didn't get the touches that I thought he would get, specifically because he's kind of a bruiser back. He can break some tackles here and there, and so yeah, that was pretty surprising for me.
Who are some of the other guys? We know Seth is a guy that's on the mend. I think Sanchez Blake is out for the season. Is there anybody else that's banged up that could maybe come back next week?
Well, Austin Myers is out. And then you've got Drake. Silverfield still says he's day-to-day, which honestly we don't really know what day-to-day means. And so I think Drake is one of the biggest question marks on if he's going to return. And I think that's it for now in terms of guys who are going to return, because the other guys are kind of pretty much done for the year.
Mm-hmm. Before I jump to my next question, man, I'll say I feel the pro guys got to have an easy actually being able to get those injury reports, because Ryan has always been Ryan Silverfield, my guy, but man, he is so close to the vest with injuries. Day to day could mean Dreek's out for the season. You just never know. So, but I know they'll need all hands on deck against SMU. SMU, I think, has a big game this week against Houston. You know, there are 3 undefeated teams left. I guess you're in the final 4 games, the final quarter of the season. If you're Memphis, what's a successful close to the regular season in your mind?
Well, I think and you said it, Tulane and East Carolina are must wins. And then if you can, best case scenario is you split a game between SMU and Houston, which in that case scenario, I think you're going to have to win on the road at Houston, because I don't see this team beating SMU. I mean, I think SMU is a really good football team this year. And whether you're home or not, I just don't think that they're going to have enough to beat SMU. So best case scenario is you beat East Carolina, Tulane, and then you upset Houston.
And I think Memphis has kind of had Houston's number these last couple of years as well, too. I forgot. I think they're on a nice winning streak. I'll have to double check. So it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. I know Houston has been playing really well. But if you're the Tigers, I think if you can get to 7-5, maybe it'll be a little disappointing to some. But I think if you're Ryan going into the offseason, you can be like, hey, we were a couple plays here and there from being 9-3, maybe 10-2. So if you can close winning 3 or 4, I would consider that season, with all the injuries they had, starting with Grant Gunnell, I think that would be not a huge success, but I think it would kind of be in line with what the program's been building up these last couple of years.
And if you end the regular season 7-5, you still can keep that 7-year streak alive of winning 8 straight, winning 8 games each year if you win the bowl game. And so I think if you get out of this year, including the bowl game, with an 8-win season, you got to tip your hat off to this team after what they've dealt with. So it's not impossible for them to still reach those 8 games, including the bowl game, but they've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they have enough talent to do so. I think I would lean. I think it's Cincinnati in their own tier. I think SMU's kind of maybe in the tier above Houston, and then there's Houston kind of at the front of the pack. So I think they have what it takes to beat Houston. I think SMU is going to be really tough on that secondary, though. Tanner Mordecai. I mean, it was tough last year, and they kind of reloaded with some more transfers. I think that's going to be a really tough game for them.
Yeah, I'm going to just be honest, and I just don't see it the way they've been playing. They haven't necessarily had a clean game turnover-wise in a long time. And so I'd be surprised if they are in the game in the last few minutes with a shot to win.
All right, so before we shift to basketball, if we we're 8 games in, like I said, we're in the quarter of the season, if there was an MVP or just a guy that has just really impressed you throughout a year that I think has had a lot of adversity, who would it be outside of Calvin Austin?
Outside of Calvin, I like Sean Dykes. I'm real high on Sean Dykes. I just think that what he brings to the offense as a receiver, I think is good. But now that I think about it, though, it's got to be J.J. Russell. J.J. Russell has got to be, outside of Calvin Austin, J.J. Russell is, I mean, he's, if not mistaken, top 3 in tackles in the country. And so I know that defense has had a lot of problems, but J.J. Russell has been playing his heart out this year. And he takes ownership. When I was just talking to him the other day, and, his leadership capabilities on that defense are also A1. I think he's really been one of the shining moments of that defense and what he's been able to do and just how consistent he's been able to play.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, and I was watching a little bit of the UCF game last week, I think he's done a lot to really heighten his chances of making it to the league and probably end up being drafted just from, coming back and playing that season. So that's why I think that the COVID waiver, the super seniors being able to come back for an extra year, he's made the most of it, and I think you got to love that. So Tigers got a bye week. So I think all eyes will kind of be on the basketball team, who had an exhibition last week against Lemoyne-Owen and Bonzi Wells, won by 50 points, plenty of highlights, was a good time. But, of course, it wouldn't be Memphis basketball without a little drama. 4 players missed the exhibition, including 5-star freshman Imani Bates, Chandler and Jonathan Lawson, and the leading scorer from last year, Landers Nolan. I might have. Oh my gosh. I apologize, Landers. But yeah, Landers Nolan was the fourth guy that ended up missing the game last week. So now this week they got Lane College led by Andre Turner, one of the greatest in the University of Memphis history. So now I think more people are going to be interested less in how the team potentially looks against Lane and more so about, are any of these 4 players going to actually be on the court on Sunday?
Yeah, and my first question for you was going to be, what do you take away from that? Having those 4 players miss in an exhibition game. I know it's not a regular season game, but you would like to see them on the floor to see what type of chemistry, they have at a full roster. What takeaways do you think that holds chemistry wise with them being gone?
Well, the chemistry for the most part looked good on the court. There were a lot of, the Tigers had more than 20 turnovers, but a lot of that I think was trying to make the extra pass, trying to do the right thing per se in terms of feeding each other and things like that. So I think it's building, but I think with the 4 players, there were various reasons for each one missing the game, according to Penny Hardaway. Imani Bates had a thigh bruise, said he took a knee to the thigh in practice, so they held him out precautionary. I think that might have been what happened. I think a lot of people kind of harken back to James Wiseman. He missed the 2 exhibition games too with like an ankle injury. So I think a lot of Memphis fans have a little PTSD, understandably, from the Wiseman situation. Chandler Lawson is awaiting some type of maybe waiver or letter from the University of Oregon where he transferred from. Penny said he wasn't really well-versed in what exactly, I guess, the program is waiting on, but that sounds like it might be a clearance issue. Jonathan and Landers, I was on the radio yesterday. Those are the 2 I think I'd be the most worried about. Penny he kind of let it slip briefly, but those 2 might be disciplinary related. And so I think those 2 are going to be the things to watch. I'm not really expecting Chandler to play Sunday unless we get, some news of him getting a waiver this week. It's unclear what Imani's status is, but I'm really more interested in Jonathan and Landers and seeing, are they going to be able to play? Was it just maybe just sitting down one game, or is there something more to it?
So with those 4 players out, which player caught your eye who got more playing time, who necessarily wouldn't have been on the floor that much if they would have played?
Oh, Malcolm Dandridge, easily. He had 18 points. It's preseason, but if that was a regular season game, that would have been a career high for him. So he was a guy that played under Penny Hardaway East with Alo and some of those other guys. These first 2 years, he's been a little snake bitten, I think, he was dealing with like some knee injuries and things like that you could just kind of tell limited his athleticism, limited his ability to kind of finish inside. And look, Lemoyne-Owen only had 2 guys over 6'8", so the competition is a competition. But that's the best Malco, I think, has looked throughout his Tigers career. I mean, he's had some highs and he's had some lows. So I think especially if Chandler's a guy that's going to be out and he's going to play the 4, and I thought he was going to be the first big out the bench. So if he's out with a clearance issue for the foreseeable future, Malco, I think, is the guy that kind of benefits the most. And he made the most of his opportunity. He got to start in a kind of a funky lineup. They started 3 bigs, but he made the most of it. So he was the guy that I think really seized the moment and probably did the most for himself in terms of maybe earning some more minutes in the rotation.
Now, I didn't watch the game, but looking at the stats, it was 52 total turnovers in that game, which is a pretty high turnover number. Was there a lot of sloppy play, or like what did that look like on the court, having 52 turnovers in one game?
It was mainly in the second half that I think the Tigers really just got sloppy. The 30 turnovers from Lemoyne-Owen, that was just, the Tigers just were playing relentless defense. They unleashed their full court press, and it was, Penny told us that on Friday, 2 days before Sunday, they hadn't put it in yet. They were kind of really put it in and shoot around. So they really came out with the full court press, and Lemoyne-Owen couldn't really do much with it, which is understandable. From the Memphis standpoint, Memphis plays an up-tempo style, so there are going to be turnovers with that regardless either way. But I just think in the second half, that's when it kind of got sloppy. I think they had 3 or 4 turnovers where a guy made a cross-court pass, and either it was just errant or just the guy just couldn't grab it. There might have been a play Earl drives into the lane. He tries to dish it off, and it goes out of bounds. So it was kind of sloppy in the second half. But I think overall, some of those turnovers in the first half were a team kind of first game jitters. They're still building that chemistry. And a lot of times they were trying to make the right play, like they were trying to find the open man. It was more so about execution. But I definitely think against Lane, even you go into double-digit turnovers, having 20 turnovers again, I think would be a little bit of a red flag and will definitely be something Penny and the staff will kind of emphasize before the regular season opens.
And all in all, when you look at the product that was put on the floor, how much can you take away from an exhibition game? Because, Lemoyne isn't, Georgia or Ole Miss or Alabama or Tennessee. Some of the other teams are going to be playing in the regular season. So how much can you really take from these type of games?
Well, they did what they were supposed to. And if they only won by, like 15 or 20, then I think it would have kind of had people raising their eyebrows. But they did what they were supposed to. They're a top 15, top 10-ish level team. So in an exhibition, you should win that game by almost 50 points. And they did that. And I think the biggest thing that stood out was even without four players, including probably 2 starters maybe, they still were able to kind of do that. And it looked like, Lamont didn't belong on the floor with them. They were missing a 5-star, missing a leading scorer that's an all-conference type level player. Chandler and Jonathan both were Power 5 recruits, and Chandler played at Oregon. So I think it kind of spoke well to their depth. Obviously, you want at least half of those 4 players back for the regular season, but I think it kind of goes to show if Chandler is out, if one of Landers or Jonathan is out for disciplinary reasons for an extended future, they have more than enough depth to kind of make up for anybody that's going to be absent, except for maybe Imani, I think.
Yeah, it'd be exciting to see how some of this talent continues to grow. I mean, the team that they are today is not going to be the team that they are at the end of the season. So it'd be an interesting year to see how high this team can get from its potential.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, they tip off 1 p.m. Sunday. Andre Turner returns to the Forum to lead Lane College. He just got hired earlier this year. So it'll be I'm expecting probably be a little bit bigger crowd this Sunday, especially with the intrigue of the missing players, but we'll see. We'll see which of the 4 ends up playing, and obviously how Memphis ends up looking. So once again, thank you guys for joining us on the Daily Memphis Tiger podcast. I'm Steven Johnson, the basketball beat writer, and this is my guy Frank Bonner, who covers the football team. Thank y'all so much for joining us.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.